The sealed envelope in Dorothy Thompson's trembling hands contained more than paper and ink. It contained 16 years of unspoken love, a grandmother's deepest fears, and words that could only be given when time was running out. At 78, with silver hair that caught the studio lights like winter moonlight and eyes that held the wisdom of someone who had learned that every moment is borrowed, Dorothy sat in the guest chair of the Oprah Winfrey Show, clutching the most important letter she would ever write. The familiar warmth of Harpo Studios enveloped the afternoon taping like a golden embrace. 300 audience members filled the burgundy and cream seating, their faces bright with anticipation for another episode that would remind them why human connection matters most. Behind the cameras, producers whispered into headsets while sound technicians adjusted levels and lighting directors fine-tuned the welcoming glow that had made this space America's confessional for over 2 decades. Oprah Winfrey sat in her signature chair, radiant in a deep emerald silk blouse that complemented her regal presence. Her warm brown eyes held that unique combination of authority and maternal compassion that had made her the most trusted voice in American media. Today's show was dedicated to Letters That Changed Lives, a special episode highlighting the power of written words to heal, inspire, and transform relationships. But Dorothy Thompson carried a secret that would transform this celebration of communication into something far more profound and heartbreaking. 6 weeks ago, she had received a diagnosis that changed everything. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, with perhaps 3 months remaining. The doctors had been gentle, but clear. There would be no miracle treatments, no experimental therapies, no last-minute reprieve. Dorothy Thompson was dying, and she had come to Oprah's show to ensure that the most important words of her life would be heard while she still had the strength to speak them. Dorothy had raised her grandson Marcus since he was 2 years old when his mother, Dorothy's daughter Jennifer, had died in a car accident caused by a drunk driver. Marcus's father had never been in the picture, disappearing before Jennifer even knew she was pregnant. At 62, Dorothy had found herself starting over as a mother, trading her dreams of peaceful retirement for sleepless nights with a grieving toddler who cried for mama and couldn't understand why she never came home. The early years had been overwhelming. Dorothy worked double shifts at the textile factory to make ends meet, came home exhausted to a child who needed more emotional support than she felt equipped to give, and fell into bed each night, wondering if she was failing the last connection she had to her beloved Jennifer. Marcus had been a difficult child, not because he was bad, but because his grief manifested in ways that a single elderly woman struggled to manage. He was hyperactive, defiant, academically struggling, and socially withdrawn. Teachers suggested medications. Social workers mentioned behavioral programs. Well-meaning neighbors whispered that perhaps Marcus would be better off with younger caregivers, people who had the energy and resources to handle a traumatized child. But Dorothy had made a promise to Jennifer's memory. She would raise Marcus with the same fierce love that had guided her through single motherhood 30 years earlier. No matter how hard it got, no matter how inadequate she felt, no matter how many people suggested she was too old for this responsibility. The turning point came when Marcus was 8. He had been suspended from school for fighting, and Dorothy had been called to yet another meeting with counselors who spoke in gentle voices about alternative placements and what might be best for everyone involved. Driving home in her ancient Honda Civic, Dorothy had pulled over at the park, where she used to take Jennifer when she was Marcus's age. Sitting on the same swing set where her daughter had laughed and played, Dorothy broke down completely. The grief of losing Jennifer, the exhaustion of raising Marcus alone, the financial strain, the social isolation, the constant worry that she was failing both her grandson and her daughter's memory. It all overwhelmed her at once. Marcus, who had been sullen and silent during the drive, climbed out of the car and approached her cautiously. "Grandma," he said in his 8-year-old voice, "are you crying because of me?" Looking into his dark eyes, Jennifer's eyes, Dorothy saw not a problem to be solved, but a little boy who blamed himself for every difficulty in their shared life. "No, baby," she whispered, pulling him into her arms. "I'm crying because I miss your mama so much. And sometimes I worry that I'm not doing a good enough job taking care of you." "But you are," Marcus said with the certainty that only children possess. "You make me breakfast every morning. You help me with homework even when it takes forever. You stay up with me when I have bad dreams. Mama used to do those things, but now you do them. That means you love me like she did." That conversation changed everything between them. Dorothy stopped trying to be the perfect grandmother and started being exactly what Marcus needed. Someone who loved him imperfectly, but consistently. Someone who saw his behavior as communication rather than defiance. Someone who understood that healing takes time and patience and unconditional commitment. Marcus began to thrive. His grades improved when Dorothy spent hours helping him with homework at the kitchen table. His anger diminished when she enrolled him in youth football, giving him a healthy outlet for his intensity. His social skills developed when she invited his teammates over for dinner, creating the kind of warm, welcoming home that became a gathering place for neighborhood children. But the real transformation came in their relationship. What had started as duty raising her late daughter's son evolved into genuine partnership. Marcus became Dorothy's companion, her helper, her source of joy and purpose. He mowed the lawn when arthritis made it difficult for her. He learned to cook so he could help with dinner. He walked with her to the grocery store, carrying bags that had become too heavy for her aging arms. More importantly, they talked. Every night after homework, they sat on the front porch and shared their days. Dorothy told Marcus stories about Jennifer's childhood, helping him understand the mother he barely remembered. Marcus shared his dreams about the future, his struggles at school, his growing understanding of the sacrifices Dorothy had made for him. By the time Marcus turned 16, their relationship had evolved into something beautiful and rare, not just grandmother and grandson, but best friends, confidantes, partners in building a life that honored Jennifer's memory while creating new traditions of their own. Marcus was now 18, a senior in high school, with a 3.8 GPA and a full scholarship to State University to study engineering. He was tall and lean like his mother had been, with her same quick smile and generous heart. He volunteered at the local elementary school, tutoring children who struggled academically. He worked part-time at the hardware store to help with household expenses. He was everything Dorothy had hoped he would become: kind, responsible, ambitious, and grounded in the values she had tried to instill. But pancreatic cancer didn't care about success stories or unfinished business or grandmothers who still had so much love to give. The diagnosis had come after weeks of stomach pain that Dorothy had attributed to stress about Marcus's college preparations. By the time she finally saw a doctor, the cancer had spread beyond surgical intervention. Dorothy had made the decision not to tell Marcus immediately. He was in the middle of his senior year, applying for additional scholarships, preparing for graduation, planning for a future that Dorothy now knew she wouldn't live to see. She couldn't bear the thought of watching him sacrifice his dreams to take care of her. Couldn't stand the idea of his final months of high school being consumed by grief and worry. Instead, she had spent 6 weeks writing the most important letter of her life. A letter that contained everything she wanted Marcus to know about love, about resilience, about the man she believed he would become. A letter that would have to serve as her final gift when she no longer had the strength to offer guidance and support. That letter, sealed in a cream-colored envelope and written in Dorothy's careful handwriting, now rested in her lap as she sat across from Oprah Winfrey, preparing to share the most difficult conversation of her life. The show's opening segments had focused on positive transformations: a mother who had reconnected with her estranged daughter through a heartfelt apology letter, a veteran who had healed his relationship with his father through written correspondence, a teacher whose note to a struggling student had changed the trajectory of a young life. But Oprah, with the intuition that had made her America's most trusted interviewer, sensed that Dorothy's story would be different. There was something in the older woman's posture, something in the way she held that envelope like it contained her most precious possessions, that suggested this conversation would venture into deeper, more difficult territory. "Mrs. Thompson," Oprah began gently, "tell us about the letter you've brought today." Dorothy's voice was steady, despite the magnitude of what she was about to share. "This letter is for my grandson, Marcus. I've raised him since he was 2 years old, when my daughter Jennifer was killed by a drunk driver." The studio audience, expecting another uplifting story, settled into a more somber attention as they realized this conversation would be different from the others. "Marcus is 18 now," Dorothy continued. "He's about to graduate high school with honors, and he has a full scholarship to study engineering. He's everything I could have hoped for: kind, responsible, determined to make a difference in the world." "That's wonderful," Oprah said warmly. "You must be incredibly proud." "I am," Dorothy replied, her eyes beginning to glisten. "Which is why what I have to tell him is so difficult." She lifted the envelope with trembling hands. "6 weeks ago, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctors give me perhaps 8 to 10 weeks. The silence in the studio was profound. Oprah's expression shifted from warmth to deep compassion, and several audience members could be heard drawing sharp breaths. "Dorothy," Oprah said softly, "does Marcus know?" "No," Dorothy whispered, tears now flowing freely. "I couldn't bear to tell him. He's worked so hard to get where he is. He has scholarships, plans, dreams. I couldn't bear the thought of him giving all that up to take care of me in my final weeks. But surely he deserves to know." "Of course he does," Dorothy interrupted gently. "Which is why I'm here. I need help telling him. I need someone he trusts, someone with wisdom and compassion to help me find the words." That's when Dorothy did something that stopped Oprah completely. She opened the envelope and began to read from the letter inside, her voice shaking but determined. "My dearest Marcus," she began, "if you are reading this letter, it means I have found the courage to tell you something that I have been too afraid to say face to face." The studio was completely silent now, 300 people holding their breath as they witnessed a grandmother's final act of love. "I want you to know that raising you has been the greatest privilege of my life," Dorothy continued reading. "When your mother died, I thought my heart was too broken to love anyone else that deeply again. But you taught me that love doesn't diminish when tragedy strikes. It transforms. It becomes fiercer, more protective, more determined to create meaning from loss." Oprah was openly crying now, as were many audience members, but Dorothy pressed on. "I need you to know that every sacrifice I made for you was a choice, not a burden. Every sleepless night when you were sick, every hour helping with homework, every dollar saved for your college fund. These weren't obligations, they were investments in a future I believed in, a young man I was honored to help shape." Dorothy's voice broke slightly as she reached the most difficult part of the letter. "I am dying, my precious boy. Cancer has taken hold, and the doctors tell me I have very little time left. I know this news will hurt you terribly, and I wish I could spare you that pain. But I need you to understand something important. I am not afraid of dying because I have lived to see you become the man I always knew you could be." She looked up from the letter directly into the camera, as if speaking to Marcus himself. "You are ready for the world, Marcus. You are strong enough, smart enough, kind enough to build a beautiful life. My death doesn't change that. If anything, it should remind you that life is precious and brief, and that the best way to honor those who love you is to pursue your dreams with courage and compassion." Dorothy folded the letter carefully and turned back to Oprah. "I need him to hear this from me, while I still have the strength to say it properly. I need him to know that my love for him doesn't end when my life does, and I need help convincing him that his future matters more than my past." That's when Oprah made a decision that would define this moment forever. She stood up, walked to Dorothy's chair, and gently took the older woman's hands. "Dorothy," she said, "would you be willing to call Marcus right now? Would you let us help you have this conversation?" Dorothy's eyes widened with a mixture of hope and terror. You mean, tell him now? On television? Not on television, Oprah clarified quickly. We'll stop the cameras. But sometimes the most important conversations happen when we have support, when we're surrounded by people who understand how much courage it takes to speak difficult truths. Dorothy nodded slowly, understanding that this was why she had really come, not just to share her story but to find the strength to have the most important conversation of her life. Oprah turned to her production team. I need you to get Marcus Thompson on the phone right now. Tell him it's about his grandmother, and that it's urgent but she's safe. While the production assistants worked to locate Marcus, Oprah sat back down with Dorothy. What are you most afraid of? She asked gently. I'm afraid he'll blame himself, Dorothy replied immediately. I'm afraid he'll think he should have noticed I was sick, should have insisted I see a doctor sooner. I'm afraid he'll give up his scholarship to spend my final weeks hovering over a hospital bed, instead of preparing for the future I've worked 16 years to give him. And what do you most want him to know? Dorothy's face transformed as she considered the question. I want him to know that loving him has been the greatest gift of my life. I want him to know that his mother would be so proud of the man he's become. I want him to know that death is not a tragedy when you've lived to see the person you love most become everything you hoped they could be. 20 minutes later, a production assistant approached with a phone. Mrs. Thompson, we have Marcus on the line. He's at school, but he stepped out of class when we said it was urgent. Dorothy took the phone with shaking hands. Oprah signaled for the cameras to stop rolling, and the studio fell into respectful silence. Marcus? Dorothy said, her voice immediately steadier now that she was speaking to her grandson. Grandma? Are you okay? They said it was urgent, but you were safe. Are you at the doctor? Do you need me to come get you? Even over the phone, Marcus's voice carried the love and concern that had defined their relationship for 16 years. Baby, I need you to sit down for a minute. Are you somewhere private? I'm in the hallway outside chemistry class. Grandma, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Dorothy looked at Oprah, who nodded encouragingly. Marcus, I'm on the Oprah Winfrey Show. They're doing a program about important letters, and I brought a letter I wrote for you. You're on Oprah? Despite his worry, Marcus's voice carried a note of pride. Grandma, that's amazing. Are you getting honored for something? In a way, Dorothy said, tears beginning again. But Marcus, I need to tell you something difficult, something I should have told you weeks ago. The silence on the other end of the phone was filled with 18 years of trust, of conversations shared on front porch steps, of a relationship built on honesty and unconditional love. Tell me, Marcus said simply. I have cancer, baby. Pancreatic cancer. The doctors say I have maybe 8 weeks left. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. When Marcus finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. What? Grandma, that can't... When did you find out? Why didn't you tell me? I found out 6 weeks ago. And I didn't tell you. Because I was terrified you'd give up everything. Your scholarship, your future, your dreams to take care of me. And Marcus, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I will not let my death become the reason you don't live your life. Grandma, I'm coming home right now. I'm leaving school. No, Dorothy said firmly, with the authority of someone who had been making decisions in Marcus's best interest for 16 years. You are going to finish your day at school. You are going to come home tonight, and we are going to have dinner together like we always do. And then we are going to talk about how to make the most of the time we have left. But Grandma, Marcus Thompson, Dorothy interrupted, using the full name that had always signaled serious conversation. Do you trust me? Of course I trust you. Then trust me when I tell you that the best thing you can do for me right now is to keep being the young man I raised. Keep preparing for your future. Keep believing in your dreams. Keep making me proud. Through the phone, everyone in the studio could hear Marcus crying, the broken sobs of someone whose world had just shifted fundamentally. I don't know how to do this without you, he whispered. Yes, you do, Dorothy said, with absolute certainty. You've been practicing your whole life, Every time you solved a problem I couldn't help with. Every time you made a good decision when I wasn't there to guide you. Every time you chose kindness over anger, responsibility over selfishness. You were practicing to be the man who could handle anything life brought your way. She paused, looking around the studio at the faces watching this conversation with tears and respect. Besides, baby, you're not going to be without me. You're going to carry me with you in every lesson I taught you, every value I tried to instill, every moment of love we shared. Death doesn't end love, Marcus. It just changes how we carry it. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was steadier, though still thick with emotion. I love you, Grandma. More than anything in the world. I love you too, baby. More than you will ever know. Now go back to chemistry class. Learn something that will help you build the future I've been dreaming of for 16 years. After Dorothy hung up the phone, the studio remained silent for several long moments. Finally, Oprah spoke. Dorothy, that was one of the most courageous conversations I have ever witnessed. Dorothy wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. It was the most important conversation of my life. And now I need to ask you for one more favor. Anything. I want to read the rest of my letter. On camera. So that when Marcus watches this episode, he'll know that his grandmother's final message to the world was about how proud she is of the man he's become. Oprah nodded, signaling for the cameras to resume rolling. Dorothy opened the letter again, her voice now strong and clear. Marcus, I want you to know that you have been my greatest teacher. You taught me that love is not something that happens to you. It's something you choose every day in small acts and big decisions. You taught me that healing from loss doesn't mean forgetting. It means building something beautiful with the pieces that remain. She looked directly into the camera, speaking to her grandson and to every person watching who had ever loved someone they would eventually lose. I want you to go to college. I want you to study hard and make friends and fall in love and build the career that will let you help other people the way you've helped me. I want you to travel and learn and grow and become more than either of us ever imagined possible. Her voice began to break again, but she continued. And I want you to remember that your grandmother's greatest pride was not in raising you. It was in watching you become someone who didn't need raising anymore. You are ready, my precious boy. You are ready for everything that comes next. Dorothy folded the letter one final time and looked at Oprah. That's my last letter, she said simply. Everything else I want him to know, I'll tell him in the weeks we have left. But I needed the world to know that dying is not a tragedy when you've lived to see your love create something beautiful. 3 weeks later, Dorothy Thompson passed away peacefully in her sleep, with Marcus holding her hand and her letter placed carefully on the nightstand beside her bed. Marcus read it again that morning, and then he did exactly what his grandmother had asked him to do. He finished high school as valedictorian. He attended State University on full scholarship, majoring in civil engineering with a focus on building infrastructure for underserved communities. He graduated summa cum laude and was accepted to graduate programs at 3 prestigious universities. But more importantly, he carried his grandmother's lessons with him. About love, about resilience, about the way reef can transform into purpose when it's held by strong hands and surrounded by community. 5 years after Dorothy's death, Marcus established the Dorothy Thompson Foundation, providing scholarships and mentorship for children being raised by grandparents. His application essay for the foundation's incorporation papers began with these words, "My grandmother taught me that love doesn't end when life does." This foundation is proof that her love is still creating opportunities for young people to build futures she'll never see but would have been proud to imagine. The last letter Dorothy Thompson wrote became more than a final message from a dying grandmother to her beloved grandson. It became a testament to the way love multiplies when it's given freely, the way legacy lives in the choices made by those we've influenced, and the way the most important conversations, the ones that take real courage to have, are the ones that echo long after the voices that spoke them have fallen silent. Because love as Dorothy Thompson proved in her final weeks, is not diminished by death. It's transformed into something larger, a foundation upon which futures can be built, dreams can be realized, and new generations can learn what it means to choose hope over fear, purpose over despair, and connection over isolation. The letter may have been Dorothy's last, but the love it contained was just beginning its real work in the world.